Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. The name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker, retired, and proud of it. I've been doing the show for quite a long time, and anybody who's watched the show knows that I am my own engineer. Although I owe a big debt of gratitude to the Access Tucson staff for setting me up and getting me going every time and getting me my air dates and all the other good stuff they do. For me, today is September 14th, 2012. For you, it's probably going to be the following Tuesday or the following Saturday or any one of 2 or 3 dates after that, because I only do a show approximately once a month. Usually, I tape the third Friday. So that means that this is the second to the last show that I'm going to do before the election, which is going to be in November. So I'll do one late in October, and I'll know a lot more, and you'll know a lot more, and what's going on for me in September 14th? Well, there's a ton of things going on. There's in the Middle East, there's terrible unrest. Let me get South Africa or North Africa in here. Right over here in Libya, which we went through a lot of trouble trying to overthrow Gaddafi, who was the dictator of Libya for almost, in fact, I believe, over 40 years. Libya has gotten its independence. Ironically, our ambassador to Libya was visiting one of the key states over there. Hello? All right. One of the key areas, which is Benghazi, which was saved virtually because Gaddafi was going to invest it and bomb it to shreds and kill everybody in it, or at least that's what they said. And that is what didn't occur because we set up a no-fly zone with NATO, and along with the spearheaded by the French and Italians and some British, we eventually supported the rebels to overthrow Gaddafi. And here, during a demonstration against a terrible video, which I may or may not get to later, depicting the founder of Islam as terrible things. I won't go into what they were, but they're really a disgusting thing. And in response, there was a riot in Egypt where they got into our compound, burned the flag, and followed up by a riot in Benghazi. And in the middle of the riot, 4 Jeeps or Jeep-like vehicles showed up, and a bunch of people with rocket-propelled grenades came out, invested the entire compound, and in the course of the fighting, they got most of the American personnel into a safer building, but lost track of the ambassador and one of his assistants who were visiting, and 2 of the American support, military, I don't know what you want to call it, security support, were killed, one of whom was an ex-Navy SEAL, were killed, and our ambassador to Libya was killed. So this video has sparked riots and attacks on our embassy in Yemen, another ally, Egypt, Libya, all over, the Palestinian Authority, the Hamas area in Gaza, Lebanon, and now it's spread even beyond to Bangladesh, India, and who knows where else. So that's as of September 14th. You know, for you, either it could be all over, and I certainly hope it is, or there could be an ongoing conflagration going on in the Middle East. I certainly hope it would be over. And I know that there's been other hassles like this. In 2010, a crazy preacher in Florida threatened to have a burn the Koran day, and that caused riots throughout the Islamic world, and they lasted about a week or so. But 20 people were killed during them. And this is unique for us because there's a Muslim party president in Egypt, which has never occurred. They had a free election, and the supposedly moderate, but who knows how moderate they are, Muslim candidate, Morsi, is now in charge of Egypt. And he didn't immediately condemn the attack on the embassy. So he got a call from our president, who supplies him with billions of dollars in military aid every year. And all of a sudden he came out and said, you can peaceably protest, but you can't attack anybody's embassy. There were actually protests for the ambassador to Libya, who was key in getting rid of Gaddafi in Benghazi. And however, most of the impression, or most of the demonstrations, even though they aren't terribly large, a few thousand in most places at a time, nowhere near the Arab Spring with millions literally coming out onto the streets from all factions. Basically, and even in Egypt, it was a few thousand people. So what does this mean? Well, it means something internationally, which is that we need to really scramble to secure our embassies throughout the Islamic world, and maybe throughout the world in general, because there's enemies out there. And in the short run, it has an impact right here in America, because there's an election going on between Obama and Romney. Now, Romney came out, and around the time that there were riots in Egypt and the embassy was infested, and before or about the same time that word came out that one of our people was killed in Libya, Romney comes out with a statement that the Obama administration is shown that it's sympathetic to the attackers and all this other stuff. Well, what was the source of that? The source of that was a tweet from the U.S. Embassy in Egypt that could see that this video, this insulting video, was stirring up trouble, and basically condemned the content of this video. A video which deserved condemnation because it was outrightly insulting and was designed for the purpose of stirring up Muslim feeling. And it was outrightly anti-Muslim, and it pictured the Prophet Muhammad, which Sunni Muslims never do. They don't believe in picturing the Prophet. And on top of that, not only did it do that, but it insulted him, made him do things that were just reprehensible and so on and so forth, that he would never have done, and would be extremely insulting to the Muslims of the world, and intended to be so. So, meanwhile, Obama came out, and he basically got on TV and acted very presidential, and is controlling the crisis one way or the other. Condemned the riots, and basically praised the people that were killed, and especially our ambassador to Libya. So Romney, meanwhile, is busy calling Obama and the Foreign Service officers that were trying to help themselves. This was before the attack. So after the attack, he's saying that the Obama administration was supporting attackers, and of course the tweet did nothing of that kind. It just condemned this anti-Muslim video, and all the statements from the Obama administration condemned the attacks, praised the people that were killed serving our country overseas. So the bottom line, in my opinion, and the bottom line for most of the pundits for a couple days, was that Romney came off very, very unpresidential. And of course, you'll see what the results are in a couple days. But even before this incident, we have a series of polls. And what do the polls say? Well, the polls show that Obama is basically up overall 3 to 5% above Romney. Well, it's about 49, 44, or 50, 45, and so on and so forth. Which gives Romney very, very little room to maneuver, because even if Romney picks up all the undecided, it's just even. And there was a study of previous midterm midterm elections, basically, where the sitting president was running again. And in almost every case, whoever was ahead in September ended up winning, or mid-September, and that's where we're at now. So both conventions have been over. Obama got a bounce, and Obama has maintained the bounce for over a week. And now Obama has a world crisis to deal with. Obama, at least for me today, and on Friday, September 14th, attended a ceremony, a military ceremony, bringing back the bodies of the fallen, and just seemed very presidential. And Romney's been just going on the attack, calling Obama a Muslim sympathizer for all intents and purposes. And of course, we have allies in the Islamic world, so that we are allies with some Muslims and we are against other Muslims. Now, George W. Bush made a very big point of saying that America is not against Islam or not against Muslims. This is after 3,000 of our own people were attacked. And that basically we support the Muslims that believe in that all religions have a right to exist, and that America can have an interest in the Middle East, and so on and so forth, and against the radical Islamic Al-Qaeda and their supporters, which are also called Salafists. And I think Salafists in the free election in Egypt got about 15 or 20%, as opposed to middle-of-the-road Muslims, or middle of the road is still pretty far of where we would want to be, but it's still middle of the road by present day. So we have a situation where Romney is just completely, I won't say completely, but he came up very, very strong. He campaigned. He actually said something that was untrue, which is that even the tweet that came out condemning the video, which he called an apology, which was not an apology, occurred while the attacks were going on. It was before that. And I saw a clip of Ron Portman, who's a senator from Ohio, who basically repeated the same thing and was questioned on it by Nora O'Donnell of Believe CNN. I could be wrong on that. Where he had to admit that the timeline was wrong and what he said was just wrong. So a number of Republicans have kind of backed off, like Boehner and Condoleezza Rice. But a number of Republicans, like Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin and so on and so forth, Bennett, who was an education Secretary of Education under Ronald Reagan, and now a conservative commentator, Hannity, and so on and so forth, basically coming up and calling Obama feckless and a lousy leader during a crisis in which our people have been killed and riots are going on throughout the whole Islamic world. So the question is criticizing an offensive video, which we are allowed to do, sympathizing with insane Muslim radicals? Well, it's not. And it's something that needs to be done. And coming up with this kind of radical anti-Muslim garbage is a threat to our interests overseas, a threat to our diplomats, and a threat to our soldiers. So why Romney would say that this is a violation of American principles? American principles certainly is free speech, and they all pointed out that we support free speech. Secretary of State Clinton did, and Obama did, and so on and so forth. But that we had nothing to do with this video, and if this video is offensive to Muslims, which it is, it's wrong. And it's wrong to go and offend anybody of any religion, to insult the founder of any religion. And if Muslims came up with a video insulting Jesus or Moses or any Western religious founder, it would be awful. And of course, Musa, which is Moses, and Isa, which is Jesus, are also in Islam, so it's unlikely, but it is possible that they would do that. So the whole thing is ridiculous, but I think the important thing about it is, where is the situation today? And what they're finding is that after these conventions, there's only 5 or 6% of quote unquote undecided. But the undecideds are saying that they're only going to switch up to 2%. So if they're Republican undecideds and Democratic undecideds, only out of the 5%, 40% are even open for a switch. So what we have over here is a very, very tight situation. Romney has got to capture all the undecideds in order to win. And what's even worse is that there's only a few toss-up states, real toss-up states. And in those toss-up states, except for North Carolina, Obama's been holding a very, very slight lead in the polls week after week after week. So what are these toss-up states? Ohio, Florida, those are the two big ones. Wisconsin, Iowa, Colorado, and there's a couple others that may or may not be as toss-up. Indiana pretty much probably going to go for Romney. So with Obama just holding this lead week after week after week, but within the margin of error, which makes it a toss-up, Romney pretty much has to take all of the undecideds in order to win. Now, Romney has, let's face it, hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on this election. Not only his super PAC has $100 million, he has $100 million to spend. But GPS Crossroads, which is Karl Rove, he has $200 million to spend. And the Koch brothers, Americans for Prosperity, were raising $250 million. Well, what is the problem with that? Well, Obama also has his $100 million to spend. And what's worse is that there's very little TV time in those very, very few markets that are open for a question. So you probably could, Romney and his allies probably could spend $500 million or $500 million throughout the whole country, but it's not going to do any good. It won't do him any good to spend this money in New York. It won't do him any good to spend this money in California, because even if there's a slight shift from ad buys, it's not going to win those two states for Romney. And they're not going to spend it in Texas or Oklahoma, because Texas and Oklahoma, even if Obama could tighten it up, which is unlikely, are still going to go for Romney. So there literally isn't the ad time to spend the $450 million. So the advantage is marginal. So this is kind of an unexpected result. And even worse is that studies have shown that especially on this election, which is so polarized, and the people are so polarized, that pretty much most people have made up their mind. Even the undecideds have really made up their mind, but they're not going to share it with pollsters. So Romney has to just... and the other problem is, and I'm going to bring this up real quick, and pardon me, I'm going to get rid of myself over here. Let's see if that'll work. So the problem here is that now this is without any toss-ups. Whoever is just barely slightly ahead is going to get the state, which would give Obama 332 points, or 332 electoral votes. 270 is all that's needed, and 271, I believe. No, 270, and Romney 206. But of course, some of them are incredibly close. Virginia's 0.1 or 0.3 apart. Iowa, Obama has an edge of about 1% and maybe less, and so on and so forth. However, if the Midwest here keeps on, the East Coast keeps on going for Obama, Romney's in big trouble. So Romney pretty much has to pick up all of the undecided in Ohio, all of the where Obama's ahead about 3 or 4 points, all of the undecided in Florida, where Obama's ahead 1.5 points, and so on and so forth. And he has to carry all of the toss-up states in order to win. So the map isn't very favorable for Romney. So I'm going back to the world. So the map isn't favorable for Romney, and Romney has to basically sweep everything. In other words, Obama has to fall apart. Meanwhile, we have a world crisis going on. I hope it'll be over in a week or so. If it is, then Obama and his cool demeanor and so on and so forth has capped the trouble, and so on and so forth. If not, then the American people have a tendency to unite around their leader during a time of crisis. And Obama has just been very cool-headed and not gone off the deep end or said weird things or offended leaders of foreign countries and so on and so forth, and actually got the Egyptians to protect the embassy and some other countries to protect the embassy, which they weren't doing before. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see whether that affects it for the rest of the election. However, Romney has to just ace all 3 debates, and he has some weaknesses in the debates, like he won't say what deductions he's going to get rid of in order to bring down the tax rates. And he won't come up with his taxes, and he won't do this, and he won't do that, and he won't state what his positions are. So he's going to get stuck during some of these debates unless he's just brilliant, and he wasn't that brilliant during the debates of the Republican primaries. My name is Reed Silverne. The name of the show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride, because I'm a federal worker, retired.